Welcome back to Got No Control podcast. I'm your host, RONEK. And before I introduce my special guest today, we're out here, just landed in Utah. We're in Salt Lake City right now. Our very first tour ever on the road. And we're bringing you in-depth conversations. So stay tuned for that. And also make sure to head over to gotnocontrol.com. Get yourself a t-shirt, a hoodie, and so much more. And with that being said, I want to give a special warm welcome to my special guest today from Utah, Strut. How you doing today, brother?
Doing good, man. Good meeting you.
Likewise, brother. I just want to, thank you for giving me the opportunity to sit down here with you today. It's my first time out here in Salt Lake City. So, I thought it was cool to see how alive the culture is out here, right? Like coming down here, I've seen a lot of like rooftops and, a lot of graph all over the place. And I think that's dope, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing that the culture is alive and striving. And I enjoy it.
Right. One of the cool things is a few of these kids, their dads were doing graffiti before them. So it's nice that it's going generational,
Definitely, 100%, brother. Utah, coming into Utah, I didn't know what to expect, right? I was just like, all right, I'm going to just drive up there, see what's up. But it was definitely very eye-catchy and impactful seeing that the culture is thriving, And it's good to hear that the new generation is young and it's been schooled by family members,
Yeah, for sure. It's a big world. And it's a small world after all at the same time.
Definitely. I wanted to hop into a little bit about who Strut is. Where are you originally from and how was it growing up for you?
So I grew up in the 90s, the early 90s, 80s and shit, but I started doing graffiti in a small town out here in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And on the other side of the mountain over there in another city.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Taking it not too deep, but, coming up at home, do you come from like a really big structured family or was it very minimal when it came to siblings?
Yeah, from who I lived with, it was my mom and my sister.
Yeah.
Grew up poor as fuck, so I feel fortunate to be where I'm at today.
Do you think those life experiences are what kind of led you to start becoming creative in your own personal way?
I think so. And I think it was the timing and the environment. Yeah, definitely.
How do those early days look for you, brother? Like, early days of becoming creative, was it like just picking up some crayons, some colored pencils, or was there somebody influencing you and mentoring you?
Yeah, I have an aunt that is a very talented artist, and she would always encourage me to sit down and draw with her. So, from the crayons to the markers, and beyond. But a very talented artist that I was fortunate enough to be relatives with.
To your early knowledge, what do you think was some of those very early drawings for you? Was it kind of like drawing cartoons or animals, or was it something else?
Yeah, cartoons a lot. And what people would have you draw, like, heavy metal shit too.
Early on?
Yeah, early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, heavy metal shit. I got in trouble when I was a kid for drawing too violent as shit because I draw people getting stabbed and shot and shit like that. So they suspended me from school for that shit.
How did you get introduced to heavy metal stuff at such a young age?
It was the 80s, man. Like back then out here, everybody was into metal. Everybody's had like names like Lucifer and wore the, jean jackets, and we'd draw, reapers and things on them.
Oh, wow.
So, but it was very popular back then, believe it or not,
Did you have a favorite band?
Favorite band? Shit, I don't know. Fucking, yeah, I'm drawing blanks now, but
it was just based on the moment of what you were influenced by.
Black Sabbath and shit like that.
Okay.
But, yeah.
And How did graffiti stumble across your life? When was that early introduction for you?
Yeah, so I was living in a small town outside of the city, and then we drove in the city, and bombing was really prevalent, and they weren't buffing as much because it was a newer thing.
Okay.
But yeah, driving into the city and seeing the freeways getting mobbed up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you kind of have an idea or a memory of who it is that you were watching for the first time as far as graffiti?
Shh. Sadly, Beat Street was the first movie I saw that showed me people painting and showed this whole little subculture going on.
Also,
And
so B Street, the movie, had a big impact on you.
yeah,
Okay.
even though they had the film artists that weren't really graffiti guys in it, but
Okay.
it was still an influence at the end of the day.
How about wall style? Did wall style or breaking or anything like that was impactful for
Yeah,
you?
yeah, breaking definitely was too. And back then we'd watch it on the PBS or the public broadcasting show, network to see that there, because they didn't play that shit at movies and stuff out here.
Also, so PBS was showing these movies.
Yeah,
B Street being heavily influenced by that new wave that was coming in, which was hip hop, right?
yeah.
And the early '80s, I want to say. Was hip hop something that impacted you as well, or was it just always heavy metal?
No, it was hip hop. I mean, I was a breakdancer 6-7 years old.
Okay.
Was in breaking crews and all that. So, I mean, hip hop and punk rock really was big influences on it. And when I first got into a graffiti crew in the early '90s, it was a punk rock graffiti crew.
Growing up for me, some of my very best friends were punk rockers, right? So I kind of could really understand the culture a bit. But what do you think set the punk rock here in Utah aside from the rest of the world?
I think maybe some of it is the angst and living in a place where there's a bunch of Mormons.
Okay.
So it makes people extra rebel. And it was the voices and what was being said was something that was relatable to a lot of younger people
Yeah.
at that time. And it was a really great subculture to be around and, formed in front of my eyes.
No, definitely 100%. It's like it's a culture in itself, right? Like something that you kind of really had to be a part of and
Yeah.
participate in, because punk rock itself, right? Like had a lot of creative individuals, like guys drawing band flyers or guys drawing band logos on their jackets to rock while they go to punk shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even the guys that played in the bands. So I feel like in that whole culture, everybody was creative in their own way, right?
For real. Yeah, the first graffiti crew I was talking about, you didn't even have to do graffiti to be in it. You had to have a skill. So like you were saying, like if you're in a band, you play the drums or you play the guitar, or you sing, you have an outlet, and that was what it was based off of. But it was a new thing for us.
Sometimes it's okay to be a soldier, right? You don't always have to be like the lieutenant chief in charge, right? Because, being the main guy could sometimes drown your energy and stress you out because you're just responsible for so much, right?
Yeah, for real. For real, yeah.
Would you say for you, like entering something new could kind of be nerve wracking in a way? Or were you always spontaneous when it came to like, I'm going to start getting into it, whatever it is?
Well, it depends on what we're talking about, but a lot of times I just look at it as a challenge for yourself, and that's the biggest thing you're battling. I'm not really thinking about, the social aspect of it
Okay.
when I get into it.
What do you say entering this culture that, you've seen on the freeways coming into the city, which was graffiti? Would you say that was something that was challenging for you, or was it kind of more like, this is where I belong type feeling?
Well, I think it was kind of both. Like it was challenging in the aspect of they're doing 2-story fucking letters,
Yeah.
off the freeway. So that's definitely challenging. But, I didn't didn't have fear,
Okay.
but things were different back in the days. So people were a little bit more critical. So you had to keep that in mind. And
By critical, do you mean like judged you more, or kind of like on your on your behind if something wasn't up to standard type thing?
judge you more or more gangster shit. People fought over things a
Okay,
lot
okay,
more, you know,
yeah.
back in the day.
You
Now
know,
everybody's staring at their screens.
it's a whole different era, right? Like
Yeah.
it feels like social media it has took over kind of like generation, right? Like it feels like now you have to be on the phone or you have to be doing something on social media. If not, it's like, oh, you're not really cool, you know.
Yeah.
And to me, that's always been interesting, coming from a time where like internet was didn't play such a big part in what I was doing.
Right.
You know, entering the culture at such a young age, right? Did you have a mentor at any point?
Yeah, I've had quite a few mentors.
Okay.
Um, so from a Utah Salt Lake perspective, we had Rescue and Esco, rest in peace.
Yeah.
But they were big influences on me, and it really excited me on the spots they were getting, you know, in the bombing stages of, you know, doing graffiti. And then when it come to freights, Caper, when I lived in Phoenix, was a big influence, and I kind of look at him as like my, you know, graffiti dad because he taught me
Okay.
so much.
So these guys were kind of like guiding you to like this is what to do and this is what not to do type thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
And try this, you know.
you know, for someone that would watch this, right, and really won't understand what mentorship means in the culture, right? How mentorship is involved as far as for your generation, right? Can
Yeah.
you elaborate a little bit on what it is to have a mentor and what value it brings as a youngster having a mentor?
Yeah, I think I mean I always try to preach and not police to the younger generations.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's a gray area, but I think, you know, knowing what not to do is a big part of that mentorship that you need to give people so that they act correctly and are respectful and, you know, learn their history, because I think that's important. And the biggest thing I try to mentor with the younger kids out here is you need to draw more. You
Okay.
know, don't be content with the letters that you're drawing right now. You always strive for more. I mean, you know, I've been painting over 35 years, and I still am trying new things and still learning.
What do you think has motivated you though, like, and kept you alive inside to say, after 35 years, I'm still gonna keep going?
Dealing with this crazy world, man, all the shit that's going on.
Yeah.
I need a release, you know, and
Yeah.
some people, you know, go to a temple to go to church, and a lot of times for me, it's, you know, going painting. It's the layups, you know, shit like that, the yards.
What do you think is the satisfaction that emotion, particular emotions, bring to you as an individual, not as a writer, but just as an individual, like finishing a piece, you know, and looking at it and being like, okay, boom, I'm done.
So I think, like, you know, you can kind of shut down all the other things going on in your life and focus on one thing. And, you know, it's all visual, it's in your head, and you see it a certain way, but then you're changing it and having different ideas. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when it does work, it's very, you know,
Yeah.
it's the satisfaction you get. And you learn little things, you know, along the way. And if you pay attention and remember them, you know, they'll help you in the future.
You're definitely right, man. There's certain things you could learn out there that you might never thought as a child you would have learned. You like being at a yard, like a train yard, like you learn like maybe not do this, do that, and like stay away from this, and you start learning things, right? And it's
Yeah.
like sometimes it can be amusing learning as you go. Because I feel like even now in 2024, as an adult, you know, I feel like I learn every day, right? Like every day I learn something. It could be from a young guy, it could be from an upcomer, it could be from an old school guy.
Right.
But to keep learning, to me, I think it's important, and it's important to acknowledge and accept knowledge, right? Like if you're that
For
type of
real.
guy that's like, get away from me, old guy. You can't teach me nothing. I'm the best alive. You know what I mean? Like that. Don't I believe won't get you that far, right? That
Yeah.
attitude.
Opposite the coin, us old grumpy guys, we can also learn from
Yeah,
the youngsters, and maybe not take everything to heart, but you
yeah,
might be
yeah.
able to learn some things that maybe help you in what you're doing.
At what point in life do you tell yourself like, I'm going from kind of giving this a shot and trying it out and see what it takes me to like now I'm fully committed 100%. This is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, so back in '95,
Yeah.
um, I battled this guy, and we battled for 50 cans and our name, and it ended up being judged a tie. But during that whole process, it made me really think. Is this what I want to do?
Yeah.
Do I want to keep doing this? Like, because the dude I was battling was no joke from like a gangster perspective, and could get hurt and lose a lot of things. So um, that made me check my heart, and from that point, I decided to go keep at it.
Keep moving. Like, I dealt with one of the toughest of the toughest. I gotta keep moving and grooving.
Exactly.
You brought up a gangster mentality today, and I wanted to ask you, as far as LA, right? Gang style graffiti and gangs are very impactful in the surrounding neighborhoods and cultures. And some guys were impacted by the gang style graffiti.
Yeah.
Is that something that's similar out here in Utah coming up for you?
Well, in the '90s, definitely. I mean, gang shit isn't as prevalent out here as it used to be.
Okay.
Like, the neighborhood we're in now is safe, but it used to not be, kind of thing.
So
But
so back to now when it how it came out the car, looking around, making sure I had the
yeah,
clear.
yeah. But there was some dope fucking gang graffiti out there that influenced me, and I used to even, draw sketches and letters for some of the gangsters and shit out here. So
Okay.
it's hand in hand. But I think the mentality is different, and I think graffiti people are a little bit more inclined to the art versus the territorial aspect.
Okay.
You know.
After battling this guy that you mentioned, right, when you were coming up, you battle this guy and you tell yourself like, I'm gonna go full force on this, right? What style do you think in your early stages gravitated to? Was it kind of like developing my hand style first, or diving straight into a throw up, or was it kind of like bombing right off the back?
Well, we battled with piecing, and I was more of a bomber
Okay.
at that point, and it made me concentrate more on piecing and doing burners. We had our little hand style trends that we dealt with back then. Definitely the styles that we used to rock back then, or at least the ones I was doing,
Yeah.
aren't even that dope nowadays, but it was dope back then.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What is the feeling, bro, of seeing styles evolve throughout the time, right? Because like how you mentioned, what was really popping back then today wouldn't be popular because of the style wise, right?
Yeah.
So seeing the styles develop from that time to what it has become today, do you take joy in like, damn, I seen this girl?
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I definitely see where it's progressed, but in the same time, I think there was more of an emphasis, late '90s or whatever, to be individual and kind of have your own style more. Where now there's so much reference and people to kind of base their letters off of the styles they like, that's kind of fall to the wayside. But definitely a lot of new shit happening nowadays.
Yeah.
That is motivating for me. You got to keep that knife sharp.
100%. It's like anything, right? Like, I'm the type of guy that if I get into anything, I want to be the best I could possibly can, right? So I want to get better and better.
Yeah.
And then even when I feel I'm the best, I still got to keep working because there's someone better out there than me, you know?
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with learning.
No, not at all. Learning, learning and being creative. Those are the two passions of my life. That's a secret,
Yeah.
really.
You know, in the early ages, I'm constructing a name, right? Like putting a name together. Like I need to find something to call myself. was
Yeah.
was Strut always the first name?
No, I went through a bunch of names before Strut. I think I started writing Strut in like '94.
Okay.
But the funny thing is I, moved from a small city to a bigger city, and was driving on the road, and there was a mechanic shop, and it had a little digital electric sign,
Yeah,
and it said, struts and shocks, and I was just like,
yeah.
strut, yeah, because people always, say I walk funny and shit. So
Okay.
I went with the fucking strut, and it was hard letters. I thought that would be a challenge. It definitely was a challenge. It took me a while to learn how to funk out those letters, but yeah, kept with it since then.
You know, one thing I could say from my personal perspective when it comes to coming up with a name, sometimes I feel like doing the same letter twice in the name it could be a little challenging, right?
For real.
Like if your name was Struts and you had to do two S's,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a little challenging because sometimes the first S might not look like the second S. You know what I mean?
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I like writing fucking putting the double T's, double S's,
Okay.
Yeah. No, I like it, and I used to be more about the symmetrical, asymmetrical shit,
Yeah.
but I think there just has to be an overall balance and flow. Not everything has to be a reflection off of the other side. So I try to make if I do two T's or two S's, I try to make them similar but different still. I think each letter, this is my little philosophy, each letter should look strong and stand on its own,
Okay.
you know?
Going into a piece, how can you take me into like the releasing a piece, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna go paint this wall. How does your thought process go about it? Is it kind of like I'm gonna drop a background first and then develop the letters, or how does it work for Strut?
So I usually freestyle most of my letters. So, when it comes to freights, sometimes you got to dodge numbers and do all that shit. So you take that into account
Yeah.
of how you're going to draw your letters. So that affects it a lot. But, how am I going to work within the space? It's like Tetris. You got to fit it in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like putting a puzzle together, right? You're just getting the pieces, you're putting them together, and you're kind of like, does this one go here? Oh, no, it doesn't. It's too big.
Yeah.
Boom. Put this one over here. Oh, here it goes. And then you just start building, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get the ideas out first. So sometimes it comes out a little sloppy, but
Yeah.
I see what's going on in my head,
Is color coordinating important for you? Like, do you like to apply a lot of color in your letters, or you kind of like to keep it simple?
I like to add a lot of colors in it. I mean, when it all comes down to it, the color's nice, stands out, might give a good first impression, but it's about the letters,
Okay. Because I know some guys are kind of like, that guy's stuff looks dope, but it's because of the colors. If you really look at the letter, it's really not that wild style or that developed. It's not a strong letter.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, yeah. And some of the best pieces, some of my favorite pieces I've seen are, two color pieces.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The color can add to it, though, make it dynamic.
100%. I wanted to dive a little bit back into your early stages of getting into graffiti out here in Utah. How was the law enforcement taking graffiti when it was barely starting to hit out here in Utah?
Well, they fucking hate taggers, and like one of the first times I ran into law enforcement, wasn't even painting, but I had a bag of paint in the whip, was eating some food in the car, and I got pulled out and got beat up by the cops.
Oh, wow.
Over it. Yeah.
Or just having paint in your car?
Over just having paint in my car, yeah.
Damn.
And it being late at night. But, yeah, that's the one thing cops don't like. I mean, I think nowadays with the generations changing and like a lot of the pigs are younger, they're a little bit more accepting of it. But back in the day, that was something they definitely looked at you as a a black eye on society.
It was really looked down upon, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
That's interesting. Like how has it evolved, right? Because now it seems like people accept it more because now they have mural festivals, and
For
then
real.
you got the street artists using a spray can as their medium now, so it kind of sheds some light, But then that kind of, I think sometimes they don't balance, right? They don't understand the difference between a graffiti writer and a street artist.
Yeah,
Like, so I think that there's a little neglection there.
definitely.
But it's definitely something that could be talked about, and
Yeah,
knowledge, give people knowledge of, like, there's a little difference there.
exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, for like a real graffiti person, there's a code of honor, and there's kind of a process you follow, and you paid your dues. So that's the difference. When a street artist, they just come in, for the money or for the art or whatever they're doing. It's
Yeah.
different, and not everybody's got to do things the same way, but there's a difference. And so I respect somebody that's paid their dues, a bit more than somebody paying
You know
an
what?
owl on the wall.
What do you say to those guys, right? Because look, one day we're all going to be old, right? We're all going to be 80, 90 years old, and obviously we're not going to be able to move like we do in our early 30s, early 20s, and possibly not be able to be out there bombing and doing things like that, right?
Yeah.
But some guys might figure out a way to gain financial stability through their work, right?
Yeah.
But others will look at it kind of like, oh, you're a sellout. We don't do that type thing, right? What is your input in that?
So sellout, is a strong word or a strong term. And I'm all about people making money and be able to provide, especially if it's, something that you're good at doing. It makes sense. So, people hate on that a little bit, but you can't hate too hard because, you're just trying to live in this world.
Yeah.
And, we need money and everything. So I respect it,
Okay.
But I think if you water down what you're doing for a commercial aspect, maybe that's not the best move to be making.
No, 100%. I understand your perspective and why you would somebody watering it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Like fucking, you go into a McDonald's and there's hand styles on the walls. Fuck
Yeah.
that shit.
Gotcha.
You know.
No, I just ask because I feel like that aspect of the culture, everybody has a different perspective, right? Like some guys might feel like, oh, you're a sellout because you're 60 years old or 70 years old, and some people feel like you should still be out there.
Right.
But some guys might feel like, what, I have a family now, I got bills and things to address. It's not as easy as when I was in high school,
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I don't disrespect for people that, they moved on from their lives from graffiti and are taking care and, raising a family wherever they have to. I feel fortunate that I'm older and I'm able to still do what I do.
Yeah.
And I have more respect for people that have been doing this longer than me, more than the younger cats, because I do realize how much of an impact it can be on your life,
100%. On your early stages of, painting and getting into the culture, what was available to get as far as like paint out here in Utah? Was it kind of like hardware store type thing, get some crayons type thing?
Yeah, it was all Krylons, man, and shit, they were under $2 a can, so you could buy like 5 cans with a $10 bill.
Yeah.
And some change and be on your way. But yeah, just Krylon, Rusto.
And it was mostly kind of just going to a hardware store, I'm assuming, or did
Yeah.
you guys have like a certain shop out here?
Yeah, no, yeah, just before Home Depot was around and everything, it was like Fred Meyer and fucking Kmart. Kmart had the Red Devil paint.
Ooh.
We'd use that shit. Their metallics were pretty bomb.
Dope.
Yeah.
Now that we have so much cans, right? You got like so many browns out there, right, to pick from. Did you ever believe that it would have been possible back then for someone to be paying the amount of money that a can goes for now?
Nah, didn't see that. Didn't see that in the future. Definitely. I mean, like when people first started painting with like the art paint, like Montana and shit, like
Yeah.
we kind of rebelled against it, even though they just had all the cool colors. There was something to be said about just using American paint, whatever it may be. But what was funny is back in the day, there was so few colors, like you could tell what color somebody used when they were painting.
Because it was
Usually.
very minimal, a minimal
Yeah.
color palette.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
To me, it's interesting though. Like I talked about this to a childhood friend the other day. How like I strongly believe that if Krylon would have gave some acceptance and Rust-Oleum some acceptance to the graffiti culture, they would have probably still been dominant right now.
They lost out, man. They lost out.
Because as a business, if you're looking at it at a business point of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, something that's moving the way it was moving. Like, why don't you want the money? But I guess they're a perfect example of money is not always what people seek.
They didn't want to be associated with their demographic,
Yeah,
basically.
they kind of looked at it like we'd rather not make the money, but know that our stuff's not for graffiti.
Right. Yeah.
And they made major adjustments, right? Like they came out with the remember that Krylon can that had like that little blue tip that will flare.
Yeah.
Came out with that. Then they changed the stem to the can, so you couldn't really put a regular tip on it no more. And so the Rust-Oleum.
Yeah.
But I just feel like in 2025, now that it's 2025, like even if you put an adapter on the new Krylon paint, it's just not good. It's just too watery.
It is. Yeah.
It's like it's not what it used to be, and I think Rust-Oleum still carries his weight.
It's all right. Like a lot of those painters' touch though ain't as thick as it used to be though.
Yeah.
Certain colors you got to watch out for. But
Do you still keep your eye open to the up and comers out here in Utah?
yeah, definitely.
What is your personal perspective on the culture right now here in Utah? Do you feel like it's thriving?
Yeah, I think it's thriving. Kids are excited. They're motivated. They're hitting some hot spots. Climbing, getting on roofs, and all that is exciting. That's more than just tagging on a dumpster and
Yeah.
saying you do graffiti.
In LA in the early '80s, bus mobbing was very heavy, right? Like the RTD buses, where guys would go and mob up the buses
Yeah.
and go all city through the bus. Is that something that Utah had out here?
Well, when I was a bomber, what we would do is ride the bus everywhere. Yeah, we'd fucking scribe or tag on them, but it wasn't anything like LA.
Okay.
But we'd use the transit system in order to bomb up around the city, before we had cars and everything.
Okay.
Yeah, hit up all the bus stops and the, areas like that where you're stopping. You could get around pretty quick that way.
How was it, brother? Like the early days when you started getting recognized, like, oh damn, there goes Strut, and you're kind of like, oh damn, these people know who I am.
It's fun to make aliases famous. I have quite a few different aliases for different reasons.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I even help people, develop and design books, and I have one of my alias names, that I have book credit for those names. But yeah, first getting recognized, is Strut. Got to go back in the Wayback Machine, man, and push the rewind button for that shit. But it was interesting, I think a lot of times to be known by a name and maybe not know the person is better because there's more of a mystery behind it. And, you get to know the people, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. But it's cool to kind of have this little mystery about it,
Have you ever had that one situation where you kind of meet a guy and he's like the total opposite of what you thought he was going to be? Like, you try to say what's up to him and he's kind of like, get away from me type thing.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I'm not going to say any names, but yeah, definitely some people, are better left a mystery, like from a meeting perspective. I mean, But the one thing I think a lot of people nowadays, they go meet some graffiti guy painting a legal wall, and he's in his own painting, so like he's not there really trying to be social. So
Yeah.
sometimes people misinterpret that for being a dick.
Yeah, yeah.
But I get it. I get in my own world when I'm painting too. So, I try to be nice, try to be respectful. But
But
I think
sometimes,
people need to keep that in mind though, like when they meet somebody, you know.
but sometimes when you're jamming out, it's kind of like, hey, man, I'm in the middle of something right now, type thing.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Man, I seen you guys have a metro out here, bro. Like kind of like in LA, they have the Metro Blue Line, the Expo Line, and the Red Line.
Yeah.
I seen the metro go by.
Oh yeah, the faster one is the front runner.
Okay.
And so that's the double stacked passenger cars. And then we call it the light rail out here, but those are the ones that kind of go around the city back and forth in the valley.
Oh, you could catch from one city to another city and then valley type
Yeah.
thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Brother, I wanted to ask you if you could share who are some people out here in Utah that are kind of considered as kings when it comes to the culture.
Yeah, so first and foremost, like the most foundational person, from Salt Lake City is Sledge, AOD, rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
But Sledge was very influential, in the graffiti scene, in the freight scene. He was the first freight king from Salt Lake City. But he even brought veganism, fucking hardcore.
Oh shit!
He brought a lot of culture out here. So, with his presence that left us, it definitely was felt. But definitely, learned a lot of, things, perspectives to look at things through Sledge. So Sledge is a big dog. Caro was also a pioneering freight painter.
Okay.
From back in the day. Hasn't been painting quite as much anymore. From the younger generations, Animal, rest in peace too.
Rest in peace.
And he was, hitting up Oakland and shit too. But he definitely, when his generation came out, he was very standout in painting crazy ass spots, like doing suicides and.
Oh wow. Like really scouting something unique.
Really scouting shit out. Yeah, being a climber, definitely. He made a big impact in here, and people actually visit his grave every year and meet up and share stories about it. From his generation too, Trek, was very monumental out here. Chew's like UTI and AOD with us, but Chew has always been the person that's mentored a lot of people out here, and has a wild style. He's a complete graffiti guy from A to Z. He could do characters, throwies, all the things. But and Kerr was definitely a big impact out here, and I put a dent in things too myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't leave Strut out the list.
Yeah.
You better mention my name when you say Utah.
And another person that's had a big influence out here is Snipe. And Snipe, has his own style out here. One of the funny things is, I moved to Phoenix, and some of the graph heads like Caro and Chew and them came out and visited me. Went to one of the Nitty Gritty graph shows that we used to have in Phoenix.
Okay.
And they were doing the block style. And the block style, if you don't know, like you fill in like a rectangle or the shape of your piece first, and then you do the outline on top of it. And from people coming and visiting Phoenix, and I know that's kind of an LA thing too that they do out there, but that influenced the graffiti in the late 90s, early 2000s pretty heavy out here. People don't really do that shit as much anymore.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I like doing that shit on hoppers though,
That style that you mentioned, it was called blockers, you said?
Block fill. Yeah.
So what they do, you said, is they...
Yeah, do like a rectangle or the whole, you fill in the whole area of your piece, and then you would outline it afterwards. So, you could do crazy fill-ins because you ain't worrying about where the letters are at, and then
Gotcha.
you just paint over the areas where the letters are not, you know, like put in your background and all that.
How was it out there in Arizona, like coming in, not knowing, and just kind of like going as you go?
So, you mean doing the block fill?
No, just in general, like moving from Utah to Arizona. Sorry.
Yeah.
You get there. Did you already have like a foundation of friends, or were you kind of like just moved there and then just started, meeting people day by day type thing?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough. It was a new city. I was fucking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Went out there, found some of the legal walls, and first people I met was Caper and Feist, NG crew
Okay.
out there, and basically just meeting those guys, I fell right into the perfect people that have had a big impact on my life. Still to this day, they're like family.
Yeah.
And I met them, and then it was over, and then I met everybody else. I don't know what it is. I mean, most places I go, it's pretty easy to just fall in with the graffiti people out there if you're out doing it.
You never felt any type of way, or like kind of like, I guess you could say gatekeeping, because you went from the surrounding area, kind of like, hey, I'm from Utah type thing. Was it always a warm welcome?
Not always, man.
Okay.
Like, when I was living in Seattle, like, yeah, people would try to punk you and shit out there. And a little bit in Phoenix, too.
Yeah.
But you stand your ground, then you show each other respect. So.
Have you had an opportunity to travel out of the country to paint?
Yeah. Yeah, just like Asia, Mexico.
Oh, Asia.
Yeah.
How was that?
The Philippines. It was great, man. What's great to see is it seems kind of like their graffiti, the subculture, is a little behind in evolving out there. So it's more fresh when I went out there. I mean, this is quite a while ago, but yeah, it's interesting to see, where the whole subculture has evolved at a current point.
Did the people kind of get in shock, like, oh, there's an American here and he spray paints?
Yeah, no, they're very, very inviting, very welcoming, more so than America. Like they have real ghettos out there. So
Yeah.
like, I'd have a car delivery service picking me up from places, and, the guys I was painting with would wait with me on the street, because if you look like, you're not from there, they're going to rob you. So it was nice. I got a lot of love out there, dude. People treat you like family out there. So, definitely, I think painting in other countries is an experience to have.
And now that we talk about other countries, in 2025, is there any other country in the world that kind of impacts you today as far as like culture? Like, damn, I see what they're doing over there. That's pretty dope.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about any countries in particular, but some of the German graffiti has definitely been an influence on me. Italy and Spain and
They got a lot of stuff going on over there.
all the places, yeah. And it's interesting to see, where their styles and what they focus on, in a particular area will, kind of represent their city.
They probably got access to spray paint a lot quicker and cheaper over there, just because it's more based over there. Like in Germany and Spain, like you got brands like Montana and stuff already over there. So
Right.
they probably get like better deals, and they're probably exclusive stuff over there that's not over here.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe one day we'll have a brand that's all American, right? And just distributed here in the States. I think that'd be dope.
Yeah, that would.
An all American company.
Right.
Have the headquarters.
Mexico's our neighbor, though. Let's fucking, go with the Mexican paint, too.
Yeah, the 360.
Yeah.
I wanted to get into, you got to travel to paint, right? And you got to see other parts of culture and graffiti, And with that being said, if you had the energy and the power to change something in the culture in 2025, what would it be?
I think the biggest thing, at least domestically, is I think, young people need to draw more and, you know, work on their style and have a convergence, I think is also a strong point. I think, you know, like when all these subcultures were being formed, we need to have a convergence again, you know, of like the subcultures, like say, you know, some punk rock and some hip hop and the graffiti and the metal and,
Yeah.
you know, bring all these people together, even though we all don't dress alike, you know, we share a lot of the same spirit. And I think that would be helpful for 2025. You know,
100%.
quit hating so much too. That's even a message for myself. You know,
A subliminal.
yeah, yeah.
Where do you see graffiti 100 years from today? You think we might have some like robots that you could manually control from home to go get up type thing?
Damn, I think about that sometimes, and it kind of gets lost in the essence, right? If it's
Yeah.
all you got a drone painting your piece, or you know, it'd be fun. I'd rather have magical powers though. You know, in the future technologies.
Man, because I'm seeing that.
Who knows? I think with the state of surveillance, though,
Who knows,
definitely
though?
made it a lot more challenging to get up, and that's definitely something I've seen, you know, in my time in doing it. There's cameras everywhere. There's fences everywhere. There's you
Yeah.
know,
It's not like back then where like
security.
it was very minimal. Now it's like anything you do, they're gonna find you.
Yeah, the world's turning into GTA now.
You know, I seen a guy promoting on Instagram that they have a machine that prints a mural for you on the wall.
Yeah,
So it takes away from having to reach out to an artist, and I thought that was crazy.
that's a ghost in the shell. There's no heart in it. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like just being told what to do it, boom.
Yeah.
So it's not the same as having somebody right there, and you know,
Right. Yeah. I mean, techniques are techniques. You get them done. Like, you know, I'll use a projector or something if
Yeah.
I'm doing a mural, but you know, like there's a lot to be said for somebody doing it with their hands. You know, use these hands.
100%. Why did I get into freight painting, brother? How did that stumble across your journey of painting? Like, how did I go from I'm getting up doing my thing to now I want to do freights?
Pretty much the NG crew, man. Like, you know, before I moved to Phoenix, when I was out here, we were painting freights. You know, I think I painted first freight in like 93, 94. But we would paint like one train and spend a bunch of time on it and all that. And then I moved to Phoenix and hooked up with like Caper and 2-1 Rack. And they were painting 5 or 6 trains a night. And the first night I painted with them, we did like 6 trains. And that ignited something in me, man. Like, that really got things accelerated and made me want to pursue it more and more, because I saw it as a little fringe aspect of the graffiti shit. And so few people were doing it back then that you never had to go over people like you do nowadays. Like, that's what I don't like, is like everybody's going over shit. But yeah, Nitty Gritty crew, fucking definitely big influence, because they were painting a lot and painting hard, and then it made me start, you know, putting more into it. And the history, how the railroad built the country, right?
Yeah.
And brought us together, is also a nice important aspect. And always lived by trains, you know, as a kid. And, you know, there's something to be said about them that hard to describe.
What do you say to those guys that are out there saying, like, you know, it's cool that you guys paint freights, but it's not the same thing as out here being in the city and getting up and doing freeways and overpasses and illegal walls and stuff like that?
That's all right, man. That's all right. You have your fucking opinion. I have mine, and I get it. You go to different places in the country, and painting freights is a lot easier. Other places is not. And, you know, the one thing I tell those people, though, is, you know, I got felonies for doing this shit. I got extradited for doing this shit. So, you know, I paid my dues, definitely with that, more than bombing. But I get it, you know. You can call somebody a freight toy if that's the way you look at it, but shit. you know.
Because at the end of
I
the
do my
day,
own,
at
yeah.
the end of the day, it's a federal crime if you get caught
It
painting the
is.
train, right?
Yeah.
And you could face some severe consequences if they catch
Yeah.
you.
I know people that had to sell their house to pay off their restitution for painting freights
Oh wow,
and all that. So it can get very expensive.
man, I can only imagine the situation. But how does that go about? Like, not to get too deep into your situation, but
Yeah, yeah.
how does that go about? Is it kind of like you're out there and someone calls the cops type thing, or the train has their own police, or how did that go about?
Train have their own police. You got heroes, you know,
Yeah, people are
like
trying to
a
prove a
hero on the
point.
bridge.
Yeah,
And some of the railroad cops, right, the railroad hires are looking for specific people. So, you know, they'll camp out and watch you, but just depends on where you're at, you know.
and your personal experiences, bro. These trained people, are they assholes? Like obviously they catch you whatever, cool, right? But like, are they coming at you like trying to beat you up type thing?
Not the workers.
Oh.
Workers are usually chill. They got other shit to worry about, you know.
They're just trying to go home.
Yeah, they're just trying to go home. So like a lot of, you know, yards you go into, they like it, you know. As
Yeah.
long as you leave the numbers and all the identifying information, they're fine with it. You know, I know big people, you know, that are in the administrative of some of the railroad companies, and they don't really give a shit. You know, like one of my uncles, my brother died,
Yeah,
and I painted a piece for him, and I showed him the picture, and he really respected that. You know.
gotcha. You know, because I know in LA it's similar. Like the workers are just like, as long as you're not making a mess or doing a fuss, do what you gotta do. Just don't paint over the numbers
Yeah.
and do your thing.
Yeah.
You know, I had this conversation with a friend the other day about paint training, right? Freight training, sorry. About the cans, right? Like, if someone goes in there, don't leave your cans everywhere and burn the spot. Like, pick them up and take them with you.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I feel very strongly that you need to clean up after yourself. You know, don't set up a campsite like when you're painting. Put all your shit out. You know, even the tips. You don't want to get paint on the rocks. I mean, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
I even feel like if you smoke cigarettes, don't leave your cigarette butts there. You know, it's better to be, you know, like a ninja or like James Bond in the yard where, you know, only the painting is what's left.
Gotcha.
Because I think that makes things hot. You know, you gotta know what to do and what not to do.
Especially if you're in a small surrounding area where everybody knows each other. Kind of like, hey, bro, kick back.
Right? Yeah.
You're going to burn it out for everybody. Because I see situations where it gets burned out for everybody. So not everybody's kind of like bummed out about it, you know?
For real. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't care too much about what other people doing, but if you're wrecking a spot for me, I'm definitely going to care a lot, you know, and you're going to hear about it.
You know, a lot of guys say that back then people will kind of take pride in painting these freights and doing full color stuff and taking up the whole car and making it look really dope. But some people are debating that that's kind of lost and going into 2024, 2025, early comments, right? That they're not well put together as it used to. Do you feel that same way?
I do a bit, yeah. No, I mean, you know, sometimes, I mean, there's years where, like, I quit benching the freights because just didn't like what I was seeing. Like,
Yeah.
you know, now everybody paints bigger, which I think is great. But a lot of times you can see their letters are affected by painting so high, so their shit's all narrow.
Yeah.
And doesn't have as much funk to it and is not as well thought out. And you got to keep things interesting if you're going to be doing it for a while. So you should, you know, come up with some concepts, push something new out there, you know, and it's not always what you do, it's how you do it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, you could paint the Ren and Stimpy again if you want, but do it in your own cool way.
No, definitely. I mean, I think being innovative is always important, right? Innovation is always the key. Like now, back home and other parts of the world, you got people hanging from buildings now
Yeah.
on some ninja stuff.
Right?
And I think that's innovation at its finest, right?
For real. I'm too old for that shit, but props to them for doing it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, so like, I think it's very impactful to be innovative, right?
For real.
How do you? I mean, not how, but back in LA, right?
Yeah.
There's certain yards that were very monumental to the culture in the early days.
Right.
As far as like, in LA, they had a place called Belmont Tunnel that was very impactful for graffiti
Right.
culture in the
Yeah.
early days. Do you guys have something of that magnitude here in Utah, or had?
I don't think of that magnitude, being a smaller city and all, but I think we've had a couple areas that were we had a place out here called Lakai.
Okay.
There was just like a spillway with a bunch of walls, and there's the Wasatch walls, and a lot of people would get busted painting those spots,
Oh
but
wow.
that was some of the spots that you know, they would frequent that I think did have an impact, so that people before the
Yeah.
internet could learn about who else is in the city painting.
For anybody out there that might be like, you know what, I want to go, hey Utah, right?
Yeah.
What's something you think they should know before heading into the city?
The buff is strong out here. But I mean, if you're gonna come into the city, it's pretty chill out here. You're not gonna get robbed, hopefully. So it's the crime isn't too bad, but just depends on where you're at. Just like anywhere. But yeah, if you come out, go paint the freeways. You know.
When everything is said and done for, brother, what do you want the world to remember Strut by, or for?
Uh, clever with them letters.
Yeah.
Abundance. Longevity. Um, and hopefully my style, will carry on.
Somebody that might watch this and be inspired by your journey, and that says, you know what, I'm gonna enter graffiti and I want to paint graffiti now. What's something you could say to that person?
Hmm. I think the biggest thing is find out what can separate you from the rest. Don't be a run of the mill. Understand what you like about it. I think a lot of people say, they paint for the fame and all that, and it definitely is a part of it. But, some people do it for their crew, their family. But, I think for longevity, you got to find out why you like it. So, like, I do it for myself
Yeah.
mostly. I mean, obviously, it's a public art, but
Yeah.
do it for myself because I enjoy doing it. And, find the joy in there, and don't be too defensive when you get some feedback. I mean, you don't got to take it as gospel,
Yeah.
but maybe listen to what they're saying. You can learn from them, but also just draw a lot.
Yeah.
Try different things. Like we were saying, be innovative.
Yeah, like things could definitely go good or it might go bad, but taking one step at a time, learning from your mistakes is always important. But for me, the key is always keep learning with anything in life, right? You might want to start baking cookies today and you're horrible, but 2 years from today you'll be one of the best guys to make cookies
For
around the
real.
city. You start figuring out, you know what? If I use rice flour instead of regular flour, ooh, you know what I mean? So it's always just being innovative and practicing and working. I got two questions to you, brother, before we get out of here.
All
One,
right.
you coming from a time and an era where graffiti wasn't really impacted by the internet yet, right?
Yeah.
The internet wasn't really a big part of graffiti as it is now, because now it feels like as a writer you have to have some type of social media presence if you're trying to move like merch or try to sell your work.
Yeah.
How do you think that has impacted the culture as far as in your world and your part of the world for it? Do you think it was a good or a bad?
I see it as both. Like, it's obviously opened up opportunities for people, to be able to sell their merchandise. But it still is echoing of the social media where people are presenting themselves a certain way that might not be that authentic.
Gotcha.
And you know, somebody is not, you know, their Instagram or whatever is not who that person is, you know.
Yeah.
That's a representation, and you know, don't do that shit for the likes, you know. That's what I was saying. You got to do it for yourself more than
Yeah.
if you're doing it for other people, you know, what's going on?
You got to really understand why you're doing it and what's keeping you here.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think that's with anything in life as well. I think I could use that for anything, right? It's like
Yeah. If your
you're-
heart ain't in it,
yeah,
you know.
like, if you're doing something just to want to fit in or look that cool, I don't feel it's ever gonna work, right?
Right.
You have to have some type of passion for it. Something has to move you to keep going. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Salute to that.
Favorite sneaker to paint in of all time.
Fuck. Now that I'm an old man, I gotta wear boots, man. The
Yeah.
fucking rocks and shit hurt the feet. You know, I mean, back in the day, we were just wearing fucking Converse and it didn't matter because
Yeah.
our feet were okay. But Pumas,
Pumas.
yeah.
What
Pumas all day.
what can the world expect from you in the future, brother?
More freights, more styles, more secrets kept.
You know, again, brother, I'm extremely thankful for the opportunity to sit with you here today. You know, thank you for giving me the time of the day and for coming onto the podcast and, you know, sharing your journey with me and with the world and the viewers. Where can they find you at?
So, I guess you can find me on the lines. But I guess my IG is fucking at Harry Baldwin.
Okay.
So, besides that, just keep your eyes open. You know.
You might see them in the next Cowboy versus Aliens, and you never know. You might see him in the next Western movie. You just never know. Hitting up a spot, man. It's been a blessing being here. We're in Utah on the road official tour. We're coming to a state near you. This is just the beginning. Make sure to head over to gotnocontrol.com. Grab yourself some merchandise, a t-shirt, a hoodie, or so much more. And if not, it's always free to like and subscribe. So show us some love and let us know who you want to see in the pod in 2025. We're live here in Utah.
Oh.
Till next time. Peace.